Everyone, it's Desiree, and I'm here with a video to show you, let's make some envelopes. Whether we have a punch board or whether we can make them ourselves. So I'm going to link you to some videos. I'm not quite sure if they're going to be up in the corners, if they're going to be off the sides, on the bottom, but I do know they're going to be down in the description. Yes, because editing is a learning process. So for those of you that follow my channel, if you remember a video that I recently released, it was for Simon Says Stamp, and I was part of the Fun and Festive release. And I had made these cards smaller than the standard A2 size card that I usually use to make. That's what you're seeing here, and it's usually 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and it's always a top folding 9.9 out of 10 times. But for that video, I made a 4 1/2 by 4 1/2. I made a 3 1/2 by 5 3/4. I made a 3 1/2 by 3 1/2, and I made a 4 1/2 by 3 1/2. And again, that's the front. So here, if you want a 4 1/2 by 4 1/2, you need to cut a piece of cardstock 9 inches by 4 1/2, score at 4 1/2. If you're looking for this size, you need to cut it 7 inches by 5 3/4, score at 3 1/2. For a 3 1/2 by 3 1/2, you want to cut a piece of cardstock 7 inches by 3 1/2 inches, score it at 3 1/2. And for the 4 1/2 by 3 1/2, you want to cut a piece of cardstock 9 inches by 3 1/2 and then score at 4.5 or 4 1/2 inches. So when I did the video, I didn't think about the envelopes. So that's what we're going to do here. And I'm going to show you two different ways. I'm going to use the punch board, the envelope punch board by We Are Memories. I'm sure everyone has seen it. It has made making envelopes a lot easier. You look for your card size in the chart, and then you move into the next column, which will tell you what paper size you need to cut to get that envelope size. And then it also shows a score line, which runs along the top next to the punch. This piece of equipment does come with its own score tool and a nice little slot so we don't lose it. I'm surprised I haven't lost it yet. So you have actually two punches on this. You have the top one, which will round the corners, and then you have the one that makes your notches. Now look at this cute little adorable thing. Look at that, my hand. Look at the size of this. This is their mini envelope punch board. Look at the size of that scoring tool. Is this not precious? You know, when I saw this, now again, keep in mind, I do run a business, so I do have a lot of equipment, especially punch board, hand punches, and so forth. So I just had to have this because I have all of the other ones. Okay, too cute? Yes, but there is a problem with this, and I hate saying this. I use this to make my envelope for my 3 1/2 by 3 1/2 card. It says here to cut a piece of paper 5 1/2 by 5 1/2. While the larger, the original punch board says a piece of paper cut 6 by 6. This little mini envelope punch, which is too cute for words, is a 1/2 inch off in the paper cutting. When I did that, it was really tight. I mean, I couldn't even fit my 3 1/2 card, my 3 1/2 by 3 1/2 in there. So just a little FYI, if you do get it, just make your paper a 1/2 inch larger and go out, I believe it's 1/4 inch on the measurement along the top. But these are what the envelopes will look like. Now again, I did use this one to make my 3 1/2 by 3 1/2. So you can see, you fold them in, it gives you your score lines, the 4 1/2 by 4 1/2 and my 3 1/2 squared, I'm just going to start saying that now, fit very nicely in the envelopes. You can use any paper. You can use cardstock, you can use solid, you can use patterned, you can use whatever it is you would like to use. So it does give you a lot of versatility. Again, you look for your card size. You then, once you find your card size, and my finger's going on down there, I'm not realizing I'm not in the camera. I will in one moment. Yes. Again, I'm keeping this in real time, so this is a long video, but I wanted to make sure you see everything. So it's right about now, very shortly, that I should realize I'm not in focus because I want to look, there we go, For my 3.5 by 3.5, you can see I need to cut a piece of paper 6 by 6, and then I'm going to start using the first score line at 3. Okay, there's my 4.5 by 4.5. I would need a 7.5 by 7.5 inch piece of cardstock, and again, I would score it at the number that they will tell you to score that with. Excuse me. So here we go. I'm going to show you those two and how we make them. Excuse me. You want to make sure you pull out your scoring tool. I like the fact that they have that little notch going on there. So we're going to start with the 4.5 by 4.5, and I'm going to make note of the 3 3/4 score line. I already have my paper cut. I figured I'd save a couple seconds. So I'm going to take the edge of my paper, can be any edge, and I'm going to line up to the 3 3/4 line. You then want to take your score tool and slowly go down the notch. Now, the table's going to shake. Here we go. Boing. There's a boing. There we go. So we're going to see that once in a while. My camera sits on my table, so all vibrations. You then want to line up that score line to that little notch that is sticking out there. So you're only using the ruler along the top once. Boing. Yes. After you, and again, I say go slowly. I go very quickly. And when I do that, I always go off course. So I always get out of that groove. So I've got this other line that's going across. So take your time. Enjoy the process. But you can see I'm lining up that score line with that tab. I'm slowly going down. I'm punching out my notches. I'm driving you all crazy with the vibration. And that's the start. Now you could stop right here. The other side of this board has the rounder. Now you may have a corner rounder already, or maybe you have a hand one. You could use those as well. I'm figuring I'm using the punch board, and I want to drive you all crazy with the vibration in the camera. Yep, because that's what I do. And you can see I've got beautifully rounded corners. So we're going to do the same thing with the other one. Now remember, this one is a 6 by 6 piece of paper, and I'm going to use the 3-inch mark along the ruler at the top. I'm just going to bring it up closer so you can see that. And we're going to do the same process. So I'm going to line it up with my 3-inch line. I'm going to make sure it's up into that, against that wall there. Slowly, I'm going to punch, and I'm going to turn a quarter. I'm going to line up that score line to the notch that sticks out. I'm going to score, I'm going to punch, I'm going to turn. Same process. Score, punch, turn. Line it up. I'm going to score it. I'm going to punch it and drive you crazy with the vibration. I'm so sorry. We're almost done with that, by the way. Then I'm going to do the outer corners. Again, I'm just going to use my corner rounder that's already here. Again, you could have a hand one. You could cut them if you'd like. You could use your, if you have those special scissors with a special design, you could use that for the ends of it. Again, you can use anything that you would want. Your scraps, just push them aside. That's all we need to do if you have the punch board. So now what we want to do, we want to put, and I use double-sided tape when I am putting together my envelopes. You can use liquid adhesive. Make it a strong one. Art glitter glue that I always use, or the Nuvo adhesive, works very well. Now when you use the punch board, since it's so precise, you only need one line, and this is a 1/4 inch thick score tape. So you notice that you want to put it towards the bottom, because I'm going to show that here, and then you're just going to literally flip it on itself. You want to keep those two pieces of tape that are on the bottom on those same sides, and you want that blank flap at the bottom. Now, at this point, you can use your score tool to score each of the lines on the side. I tend not to do that. I may use my bone folder or my scoring tool for the top. So I'm going to remove the tape. I'm going to push the one side down. I do push the sides in first. The tape is going to secure it, and then I flip up the bottom. The reason why I don't use the score tool on those three sides, I will use it on the top. I don't use it on the side in case I've got bulk, in case I have dimension. I don't want it to be completely flat. Give me some room in there, because this punch board will create a envelope that is close to the side. I'm looking for my card right now. That's what I'm doing. But it will create an envelope that's very close to the sides. So it doesn't leave for much wiggle room, and room for dimension. So maybe instead of looking at your 4.5 by 4.5 card size, you could go up to a 5 1/4 or 5 1/2 or 5 inches to make your card, to make your envelope out of. We're going to do the same process. I'm going to choose the two side flaps that are going to where I want to apply my score tape. Again, this is 1/4 inch. I want to make sure that I put it on the same side of the flaps. So either both on the bottom or both on the top. The other two, the top and the bottom, when we keep it a diamond, do not get any score tape. We're just going to flip it over, excuse me, on itself, and we're just going to fold in the two sides and the bottom. I only use my finger to crease. Again, if you would like to use your bone folder, you certainly can. No one is saying you don't have to, but I will give you the reasons why I don't. You may like them. Remove the release paper, fold up the sides, and there we have our envelope. And again, this is for the 3.5 by 3.5, and it fits nicely in there. You have about a very scant 1/4 inch, so an 1/8 inch, a scant 1/8 inch on each side for your cards. It's very easy, it's very simple, and trust me, there's many more things that you can do with a punch board. Some of the creations that people come up with are absolutely phenomenal. So if you're interested, I'll have a link to it down below. But these two cards, you really don't have these choices. This is a 3.5 by 4.5 card. It does have a 3.5 by a 4.5. So you could use this for that card. You would need to cut your paper 6 3/4 square and then use the score line of 3. Now, for this one, you are not going to find a 3.5 by 5 3/4. So you could go into a 3.5 by 6 if you wanted to. So you could use this for all of your card making. Absolutely. But what if you don't have one? Maybe you don't want to get one. And you know what? Hooray. You don't have to. This is the card that I made without using a punch board. And again, I will link to her video, and it's Lindsay, the Frugal Crafter, who has shown so many tips for me. And in this video, she actually gives kudos to another person that she learned it from, a friend of hers. So I like to make sure I give credit where credit is due. This was not my idea. I learned this from Lindsay, and I will have that video going somewhere, either somewhere on this screen or down in my video description. So this is what you're going to do. Any card, even if you make the standard A2 size cards, again, any card, you need a ruler. So you put your card down with the top, wherever your fold is, put your card the way that it's going to sit. You are going to measure from corner to corner. Now, this is like 6 3/4. I will round that up to 7. I'm going to add 1 inch. I'm going to take this up to 8. So that means I need an 8 inch by 8 inch piece of paper or cardstock. That's what this piece measures. So again, corner to corner, I round up to the next whole number or half number, and I add an inch, or you add an inch. You set your piece of paper down as if it's a diamond. Put it in a diamond shape. You're going to take your card and you're going to put it in the center of this. You don't need to measure. Please do not get that ruler out and say, okay, I'm 3 inches from this side and 3 inches from this side and 4 from the top and 4 from that. Don't do that. Just put it in the center, eyeball it. Fold the one side in. After you have the one side folded in, you're going to fold in the other side. Now, here's what I do. I make sure the 2 points are lining up. Where I landed on the first one, I make sure the second one's close to it. Then I'm going to use my fingers. Again, I'm not using my bone folder or my paper creaser. I'm then going to make sure those areas that are overlapped, I'm going to flip this up. And I'm going to keep using my finger to crease that. I'm going to do the same thing here. So you see how you have that piece of cardstock right under my index fingers that's doubled. I want to make sure that stays down. And I'm going to line up this top, and I'm going to use my fingers and really push down on those corners. I need those corners to be prominent, at least for me. We've basically made the envelope. We're going to open it up and we're going to cut out these corners. No scoring tool, no punch board, and no template. Just cut out your corners, and again, you'll see those lines to cut on from the way you folded it. And you're just going to continue to cut out all 4 corners. Now, you can also round your outside corners. So you can see you're kind of doing the same thing of what the punch board did. There are other ways to do an envelope as well. No, too much calculation for me. This was simple. So you can see now they fold a lot easier. Now, what I will do with the fold that comes up, I will cut that off and I'll show you that. So with this bottom flap up, I will take a pencil and go underneath it, not at the edge because I don't want to see the pencil line. So I just go right underneath so that I know where I have to put my score tape. So I'm going to flip this over. I'm going to make sure that I'm putting my tape on, just below that line. So I'm just going to use 2. I'm going to use 2 strips of tape this time because you can see the big gap that you have when you're doing this. So you do have some extra within the fold, which is fine, but I do want to stay beyond that because I don't want it to come to the outside, my tape, my adhesive. That would drive me crazy. I know it would too, you. So again, on the other side, again, making sure I'm on the bottom, even though it's on the top, it's still on the bottom of this flap. And now I'm going to make sure I put that tape down into that corner. And I'm actually going to put another one here because that was like, whoa, a little bit far away from that. I really want to make sure these are secured. Now again, you can use liquid adhesive. You want to make sure that it's strong and that it grabs quickly. So the liquid adhesive that I use the most is there's 3 of them. There's the Nuvo Deluxe Adhesive, my Art Glitter Glue, which is my favorite. And I also like the Simon Says Tacky glue. Those 3 will work very well. You want something that's going to grab quick. There's a lot of folds and layers going on here. So you want to make sure that it's going to hold up. You can use both. I mean, you can actually use your glue as well, even though you're using score tape. That'll give you just an added security. I'm going to press down, making sure that my envelope is still open. But I'm going to turn it over, and I could see these maybe there's little tiny corners that are sticking out because, again, maybe we didn't cut straight. It's okay. We can trim those. I'm going to trim off that top corner because in my mind, why did I trim that off? Because in my mind, if somebody's going to go in there and reach for the card, they may poke themselves. That's exactly what I'm thinking. That's exactly why I cut it. Yep. I'm going to turn it over after I turn down the top flap. And I'm just going to make sure that, again, I don't have these little corners sticking out. I would just trim them. And now my 3.5 by 5 3/4 top folding card now has its own envelope and has room for movement. So simple, right? We're going to do it one more time. So the 4.5 by 3.5. Now again, it had it if you have the punch board. Sometimes I do find this is quicker. I mean, because I don't want to go looking for it. So again, this measures just over 5.5. I'm going to round it up to 6. I'm going to take it to 7. So I need a piece of cardstock that measures 7 by 7. If this was in the area of 5 1/4, I would move it up to 5.5. I would take it to 6.5. So again, this piece is 7 by 7. I'm going to place it on the diamond or in the diamond shape, and I'm going to put my card on it. So we naturally slide our cards in basically sideways. At least mine does. When I have an envelope, I'm still looking at the card the right way, but I'm sliding it in sideways. So that's what this envelope is going to do. I'm going to place it in the center. I'm going to eyeball it. There is no measuring. Use your finger, fold one side down, crease it. I'm bringing in the other side, making sure I've got some room, matching up the points in the center of the card. I'm then going to make sure I press down with my index fingers as I fold up the bottom, making sure everything is staying flat, and then pressing down with my fingers only. Again, I just don't use a paper creaser on this. I like the fullness of the envelope. I'm going to do the same thing on the top. Make sure my index fingers stay in place as long as they can to hold that second layer in, and I'm going to use my finger to press down and create the crease. Once I know I have good creases and I've pushed on my corners, I'm going to unfold it, remove my card, and I'm then going to cut out the corners. And that's just by taking a pair of scissors and just following the fold lines that you created when you folded this piece of cardstock around your card. And again, you do want to do it with your completed card. If you have dimension, if you have embellishments, all of that added layer will be accounted for when you're using this way to make an envelope. That's why I will round up to the next half or the next whole number. It gives me that little extra room because you all know I love dimension. I'm going to take my pencil just in from that edge of the bottom flap, and I'm going to add my score tape. So you can tell it is a wider area that's being covered. That's why I'll put 2 rows of score tape. Again, you can use your liquid adhesive. Whatever you have, use. Just make sure that it's dry before you do anything with it. You don't want it falling apart. You can also use washi tape. You don't have to do. You could still use the score tape. You could still use your glue. But after you fold everything up, you could use washi tape on the outside as well. I do like to rub my finger along the tape to make sure that it is adhered completely down onto the cardstock. And then I also do that the same before I pull it up, again, just to make sure that I have good coverage and a solid contact between the tape and the cardstock. I'm going to lift up, and right here is where you could add some washi tape. Now I have this little corner that's sticking out. I'm just going to come in with my scissors on an angle just to trim that up. And now it's even. No one will ever know. I'm going to cut off the top corner again. Again, in my mind, I don't want somebody hurt. Yes, I'm in the safety compliance field. Yes, can you tell? But it could hurt. I don't want anyone being hurt when they're excited to get a card. And you can see that this card fits nicely in there. I've got plenty of room. It can breathe. And I have a perfect envelope. And the same thing, when I close that top flap, I will make sure that there's no corners sticking out. So you can see 2 cards that we made, 2 envelopes that we made, very similar, very simple. Thank you, Lindsay. Yes, if you're watching, awesome trick and technique. Again, there are other ways to do this, but let me tell you what. The other way is if you take your card, you add 2 inches to the height, you take your width, you times that by 2, and then you add 2. It limits you because really we only have 12 by 12 pieces of paper. Depending upon the card you use, like my 3.5 by 5 3/4, I wouldn't have a big enough sheet of paper to make my envelope with that calculation. So this, you will always be able to fit in a 12 by 12 piece of paper. But you also do have the option of the punch board. So I hope you did enjoy this. I do apologize. You know, when I made that video, I had a lot of requests. Well, what about the envelope? What about the envelope? I love those questions. Again, I am here to help you, to inspire you, and to get you into your rooms or your space and make sure you do something creative every single day. So hopefully this will help you do that as well. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you do. You don't want to miss anything else that's coming on. And by all means, read the comments. They're sometimes comical and we have fun. If you do have a question or comment, please leave that down below and I will get back to you as soon as I can. The products that I did use, aka the punch board, I really didn't use anything else. Get a ruler from the dollar store, okay, or your local anywhere. Everybody's got them. But I will list the punch board down below if you are interested in seeing it and give you options as to where you can find it. I hope everyone's having a wonderful day, but always remember what's most important to me. Always be creative.